Welcome to the Successful Practices for LIHWAP Tribal Grant Recipients webinar. Our objective today is to share what tribal grant recipients can do to reach maximum spend down and administer their LIHWAP program successfully. My name is Monica Toya. I am a program associate for the Tribal Training and Technical Assistance team at Looks Consulting Group. We work with federal LIHWAP program specialists to provide support to LIHWAP tribal grant recipients. We're available to answer questions about this webinar and continue to be available if you need assistance with the forecasting or spend down processes. In this webinar, we will highlight successful practices as shared by tribal grant recipients in 2022 and 2023. These successful practices are organized into 6 categories of activities that can help tribal grant recipients with spend down and grant administration. The categories are program administration, improving benefits access with eligibility, intake, and payments, community outreach, teaming with water utility providers, building community partnerships, and tracking progress with data collection and reporting. Let's begin by reviewing the first category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients, which includes 3 successful approaches to program administration. First, most successful tribal grant recipients align LIHWAP and LIHEAP systems and practices to make implementation and tracking easier. Successful tribal grant recipients used established LIHEAP processes to help administer LIHWAP grant funds, leading to faster implementation times and easier tracking of data. These activities include using LIHEAP program administrators as staff in LIHWAP program administration, using LIHEAP policies and procedures as a model for LIHWAP, revising the LIHEAP application to include LIHWAP so there is only one application for both services, using similar benefit determination processes, using the same fiscal practices for payment processing and reconciliation of payments, using the LIHEAP vendor agreement as a template for water utilities, using existing relationships with vendors to foster new relationships with water service providers. For example, setting up regular times to coordinate with your water service providers to update each other on customers who might need assistance with rate reduction or late payments. And finally, using the same data collection systems, but tailored to ensure information needed for the LIHWAP annual report is also collected. For example, add additional columns to track LIHWAP payment amounts or required reporting data. Here is what LIHWAP tribal grant recipients had to say about aligning LIHWAP and LIHEAP administrative practices. The Kuslor, Umpqua, and Susla Indians shared, we basically just emulated everything in the LIHEAP program. There wasn't a lot of work to do because we just folded most of the policies of LIHEAP into LIHWAP. The Eastern Shawnee noted, we aligned our program directly with LIHEAP, even utilizing the same application. It helps streamline and make the startup easy. And the Coeur d'Alene tribe said of their program administration that if clients have previously applied to LIHEAP, they will use the same application. We call the client to make sure their information is correct, and then they will update it with a new date. Second, in the program administration category, grant recipients found cross-training LIHWAP staff on other social service programs helpful. Some LIHWAP offices trained social service staff to understand eligibility requirements for multiple programs in addition to LIHWAP, increasing the staff's ability to make referrals and enroll clients. For example, the Lumbee tribe coordinated with its housing department, which provided support for household water infrastructure repairs and replacements funded by the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act of 1996. This allowed households to receive minor plumbing repairs along with water utility support. Providing these types of wraparound services helps to ensure households do not receive high water bills in the future as a result of leaky plumbing fixtures. In addition, LIHWAP intake staff came from CSBG-funded work training programs, and these staff helped low-income households to receive LIHWAP services efficiently. A third administration approach to highlight is to use well-established data systems that are easy for staff to manage. Overall, tribal grant recipients found it easier to work with data systems already in place. Tools did not need to be new or complex to be helpful to staff, and Excel spreadsheets were often the application of choice. Avoiding the need to learn new tools saved time and minimized frustration with administrative processes. When speaking with the administrator for the Kuslo, Umpqua, and Suswa Indians, they shared, the data collection process is simply an Excel spreadsheet that was provided by LIHWAP. The second category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients involves maximizing access to benefits and impact with eligibility, intake, and payments. In our first of 4 successful approaches, tribal grant recipients applied categorical eligibility to simplify intake and eligibility. Categorical eligibility allows grant administrators to simplify the intake process by identifying households as automatically eligible if at least one household member is enrolled in LIHEAP, SNAP, TANF, SSI, or means-tested veterans programs. When applying categorical eligibility, there is no requirement to test household income. This can be done by collecting minimal application information such as a water bill. Tribes utilizing categorical eligibility, especially LIHEAP eligibility, were able to immediately identify and qualify LIHWAP clients for service. About 1/3 of the tribal program administrators interviewed indicated that they combined the LIHEAP and LIHWAP application to make it a utility application. This practice resulted in the usage of more LIHWAP funding upfront. Creating a one-page supplemental application also helped. The second approach in this group is to find ways to maximize benefit payments. One of the most effective ways to spend down grant funds is to address late payments or arrearages and unpaid water bills. It is important to know that arrearages can be paid in full using LIHWAP funds, and grant administrators should establish processes for reviewing amounts that exceed maximum benefit amounts for your program. A third approach in this category is to ensure inclusion of payments for current bills or rate reduction. For LIHWAP, the term rate reduction means making payments to serve households that are current on their water and/or wastewater bill, as opposed to those that are past due. The LIHWAP benefit payment reduces the amount the household owes and supports affordability. Benefit amounts that are typically determined through a benefit matrix. A benefit matrix is a tool such as a chart or a point system outlining which LIHWAP benefit amount will be available to different households based on required factors, such as household income, household size, and household water costs or needs. You can find example benefit matrices online at the link shared on the slide. Flat rate payments based on a benefit matrix can exceed the total current bill and result in a credit on the account that can be applied to future bills. The fourth and final approach to maximizing LIHWAP benefits is to take the time to explain the application process and the language of the application with customers. We learned from the public payments that how information is presented matters. They emphasize that it helps to be patient with clients and do your best to explain everything fully. Sometimes people get scared and they might not understand the application language. So taking the proper time to explain everything goes a long way. The third category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients involves spreading the word about LIHWAP program through community outreach activities. The first successful practice is to use your individual community knowledge to strengthen outreach. Take time to ask about and understand what the needs are in the community in terms of support and communication. According to several tribal grant recipients, staff awareness of community needs drove the resources used to reach out to parts of the community that needed multiple options for applying, be it in person, over the phone, or online. Another important practice for tribal grant recipients has been using multiple methods of outreach to engage community members. The top outreach methods used by 81% of the tribes with successful implementation rates were community partnerships, websites, flyers, and social media, Facebook specifically. Through community partnerships, tribes working with water utilities, local schools, churches, youth groups, and county offices were able to provide more targeted outreach. Common practices included making applications available at the water vendor offices and other service provider offices, putting application and/or information inserts in monthly utility bills, and resource sharing amongst programs. Flyers created to promote LIHWAP were used for outreach purposes, posted in various offices, and disseminated on social media, in newsletters, newspapers, via radio stations, at community events, and at community program coordination meetings. Tribal websites were used to get the word out and making accessing forms easier. For some tribes, the LIHWAP application was placed on a tribal portal where clients could retrieve the application and/or apply directly. One tribe utilized a social service portal where community members can apply for multiple services on one site. If they log in for other services, they can see that LIHWAP is also an available program. The last approach contributing to successful outreach efforts is being inclusive and expansive in your intake practices. The Hopland Band and the Ute Tribe complete applications for tribal members over the phone if they do not have internet access or if they're unable to drive to the LIHWAP office. For many, the cost of gas can be an economic hardship. Tribal LIHWAP staff can allow tribal members to take photos of documents required to apply for LIHWAP assistance and submit them via email. Tribal grant recipients can reduce the barriers to application and support by meeting clients where they are and considering accessibility as a priority. One example of inclusive and expansive outreach was described by the Bishop Paiute tribe, who shared, "I really do help the elders. Some of them can't drive. In my LIHEAP program, I state that I will make myself available if an elder over the age of 55 needs an application. I can deliver in person and pick up in person. Since the application is 2-in-1, LIHWAP is in the application. So if they also needed assistance in hand carrying for those documents, I do so." The fourth category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients involves teaming and building relationships with water utility providers. First, tribal grant recipients should formalize and build collaborative relationships with water utility providers. Water utilities and vendors can be key to identifying ways to spend on LIHWAP funds. They can connect you with customer information needed to identify current arrearages and credit opportunities. For example, the Lummi tribe's grant administrator had such a strong sense of camaraderie with vendors that a representative from the local sewer authority would walk to her office with a printout of past dues, and the two would go through it, which helped to avoid the need for emails, minimize wait times, and made collaboration enjoyable. Second, tribal grant recipients should establish procedures to reconcile payments to water service providers, even when there is not a signed agreement in place. Even without a vendor agreement, tribal grant recipients can ensure that water utilities, large or small, will provide written reconciliation and confirmation on a regular basis. OCS recognizes that grant recipients may not enter into a written agreement or contract with all water utility vendors. In this case, there are several things grant recipients can do, such as send an agreement to the utility vendor at the time a payment is sent that states that the utility vendor agrees to various terms by accepting the payment. They can also call the utility vendor and ask for verbal confirmation that benefits have been credited appropriately and that services have been restored on a timely basis or disconnection status has been removed. Call the household and ask for verbal communication that benefits have been credited appropriately and that services have been restored on a timely basis or disconnection status has been removed. They can also accept a copy of a regular billing statement sent to the household confirming that payments have been properly credited. Grant recipients should document all of the mentioned verbal interactions in a written log or a spreadsheet. You can learn more about this on the OCS website at the link shared on this slide. Third, water utility providers can help identify which of their customers would make good referrals for the LIHWAP program. Vendors can also assist tribal grant recipients with outreach through bill inserts or a message included with disconnection notices. Finally, it is important for tribal grant recipients to practice clear and timely communication with water utilities. Knowing their billing and notification cycles can be very helpful, not only while working with utilities, but while working with customers in need of support. The Shawnee tribe shared, we have trusted relationships with many service providers. Because tribal assistance programs are common in Oklahoma, most water service providers have existing policies and procedures. The fifth category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients involves engaging community networks and building partnerships. First, it's important to build camaraderie and leverage established relationships with government partners, state programs, school systems, internal tribal programs, and social service partners. The Lummi tribal administrator wanted to make sure that she could reach out to non-reservation tribal members. She worked with the county government to occupy an unused office to conduct intake and enrollment. This facilitated more than a LIHWAP success. It created an opportunity for Lummi tribal members to be with county government personnel and allowed them to help link customers to additional services as needed. It also meant that the county had the privilege of interacting with tribal members and staff to build relationships. A second best practice in this category is to use partnerships to reach those most in need. Identify partners best matched to help reach specific populations within the community. For example, tribal grant recipients may be able to reach more households through schools or reach the elder population in churches. The sixth and final category of successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients involves tracking and reviewing your own progress by planning ahead for data collection and reporting. First, tribal grant recipients should establish a system early and use it across the program. Tribal program administrators who were clear on the type of information needed for reporting had an easier time with data collection and reporting. Aligning systems to collect the data needed for the LIHWAP quarterly report form helped tribal grant recipients keep track of and update customer information. For example, the LIHWAP quarterly report includes total households assistance provided by service type, as well as LIHWAP implementation. Second, use data collection systems that work best for your situation. Across tribal grant recipients, the types of data management systems varied, with many using Excel spreadsheets to manage information. The spreadsheets were either for the LIHWAP program only or part of multiple social services spreadsheets where staff have access to everything they need. Some tribes deployed specific client management software, such as OneTribe and Eagle Sun systems. Now that we've shared some of the most successful practices for LIHWAP tribal grant recipients, it's important to know that you are not alone on your grant administration and spend down journey. Here is where you can find support. Your federal LIHWAP program specialists are available to assist you should you have questions about these or any other practices related to administering your LIHWAP funds. Make note of or take a screenshot of the program specialist contact information shown by region on the screen, or reference the PDF of the slides from this presentation if you need their information. As your tribal TTA provider, I am also here to support you if you have any questions about what you learned today. Our contact information is available on the screen, as well as links to LIHWAP resources on the web. Please note that this webinar is part of the Successful Practices for LIHWAP Tribal Grant Recipients Toolkit, which can be downloaded using the links provided in the description section of this video. Thank you for taking the time to watch the Successful Practices for LIHWAP Tribal Grant Recipients webinar. If you have your own successful practices, please share them with your program specialist or TTA provider. We would love to share your successes with others. Thank you for your attention and have a wonderful day.